all of you here. I live with my family in Puyallup, and as we were kind of driving from Puyallup to here, I was telling my wife, I was saying, these are challenging issues, these are kind of trying times, but at the same time, this is probably the best place to have honest conversations about these challenging issues. And we are very blessed, we are just live Western Washington, that the United States, that the First Amendment kind of protects religious freedom, but the kind of First Amendment, that we should be kind of honest and have thoughtful, engaging, reflective discussions about these important issues. After all, that we, all of us, are in this boat together, and we need to kind of just put our minds together and just kind of see what we can come up with to make things better. So to discuss these important issues, dealing with extremism and how to combat it, I have two distinguished guests. And actually, one big reason that I kind of agreed to moderate is just because of these distinguished guests. Let me just start with Jawad Khaki. Jawad Khaki is member of this kind of community. He may be some of your neighbors, friends, or co-workers. He has been living here for a long time. But he has an interesting story. He is essentially in some way kind of a perpetual immigrant. He is family of Indian origin, but he grew up in Tanzania. Then he went to United Kingdom, got his degree on computer engineering at the City University. And then just kind of worked several years kind of developing networking systems of Unix for AT&T and Bell. Eventually recruited by Microsoft and started to work Microsoft, and he made his way up to just being the kind of the vice president of Microsoft, dealing with issues about networking. Several years ago, probably to the surprise of some of his co-workers, he decided to retire. And when I was kind of doing some research, he kind of explained, I find it inspirational. He explained his decision to retire from Microsoft in this particular way. He said, you can essentially divide your life up 4 parts. The first part, you spend learning. The second part, you spend earning. The third part, you need to spend on serving. And then the fourth year, hopefully you will get some rest. But then he said, I got my education, I made my money, thanks to Microsoft, and now I need to kind of serve the community. He and his wife, Kanis, established a foundation called Khaki Foundation and work on elevation of poverty, not only in our kind of the local communities here, but throughout the world. Also in terms of kind of religious life, he is one of the founder of Iman Center, which serves the Muslims throughout the community, particularly our brothers and sisters coming from kind of Shia background. So, and he lives in the area with, and also he has 2 sons and 1 daughter. So I'm very, very pleased to that myself. I'm really pleased to have him here, and because of all of his kind of both intellectual work but also service work, he just got so many awards and honorary doctorates, and I'm not going to bore with some of this kind of things with you, but just please welcome, please join me welcoming Dr. Jawad Khaki as one of the guest speakers. And our second speaker is coming from Southern California, Jihad Turk. And I'm again very kind of pleased because I kind of study issues about American Muslims, and one of the kind of pioneer institutions of American Muslims kind of experience in the United States is the Islamic Center of Southern California. And he kind of that, and he just kind of grew up in that particular tradition. But also several years ago, he involved the establishment of a graduate school. One thing again, American Muslims are kind of struggling in terms of kind of training the next generation of American Muslim leaders here. And just like several other American Muslim organizations, that Jihad and some of his colleagues established Bayan Claremont Graduate School, is a part of Claremont Graduate School systems in the greater Los Angeles area, and kind of specifically focus on training the next generation of Muslim American leaders in this country. Like Jawad, Jihad has also got a very interesting story. He is a son of a Palestinian American father and an American Methodist mother. And towards the kind of age, about 17, 18, he just wanted to understand his roots more. embracing kind of his Muslim identity, he went to Saudi Arabia and studied usul al-fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, and also he spent some time in Iran to learn Persian and also kind of do a little bit more kind of Islamic studies. He came back and he got his degree from University of California, Berkeley on Arabic. Then he got his master on Islamic studies from University of Texas. And currently he's about to finish his PhD in Islamic studies at UCLA. When I was doing some research about jihad, I come across this coverage at LA Times several years ago. It kind of said his name, jihad, his message, peace. Which kind of like, I will, as a Turk, I will probably kind of say, his name, Turk, but he's American. This institution that I mentioned, Islamic Center of Southern California, is kind of famous because kind of they established this perspective, this worldview, and I think jihad kind of articulates it well. The idea is that just one of the kind of founders articulated in this particular way. He said, home is not where your grandparents are buried. Home is where your grandchildren will grow. And I think that's a very, very important message that everyone should hear, and every Muslim, non-Muslims in this community to hear and pay attention to this message. And again, likewise, please join me welcoming Jihad Turk to the podium. Okay, so I said that this is, kind of trying times, challenging times, and as you look at the kind of title, there are the causes and remedies. Let's start with the causes, and I want to kind of ask both panelists. In order to discuss the strategies and remedies, I think we need to have some understanding about the causes, the origin of this kind of extremism. And that when we look at the kind of literature or different arguments, that sometimes people say this is an Islamic problem or this is a religious problem. Some people are going to say this is an ecological problem or political problem. Some people are going to say this is a human problem. Where do you stand? What is the cause of extremism?
There might be some feedback on this. Maybe we can turn down the volume just a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. It's a political problem. Next question. There's an academic from Princeton, Bernard Lewis, who wrote a book called What Went Wrong, right? And he talks about the Islamic world as having bloody borders. And there's this question of, what's really going on? Why is there so much conflict regarding the former Islamic empires, the Islamic world, if you will? And there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it through the lens of an exceptionalist perspective or the lens of a universal human perspective. So unless you're racist, you probably want to look at it through what's going on here through the lens of something, an approach that can explain all kinds of problems around the world. And so this is one of the questions I endeavored to answer in my graduate work at UCLA. And it took me a while to come to this conclusion, but I'll share with you my entire thesis. No, I'll share with you just the brief overview of what I came personally to understand about these conflicts around the world. A colleague of mine at UCLA, Professor James Gelvin, wrote a number of books about modern Middle East history. And what he documents is the transition from the Muslim world, which was a world of empires, the Ottoman Empire and others, transitioned into the world of modern nation states. And nationalism being now the new way that the communities are organized. And nationalism, if you look broadly speaking around the world, generally, according to, there's a scholar named Foucault, who argues that modern nationalism usually centers around five main things: culture, history, language. People who have a nationalist narrative have similarities in all of these areas. So culture, history, language, attachment to a particular piece of land with certain borders, and religion. And religion is one of the five things. And if you look at all of the modern conflicts around the world, usually there are competing narratives rather, within the borders of a certain country as to who should be in power within that border, within those borders. And if you look at all of the conflicts around the world, and you could look at something that's maybe more familiar in the West, you look at Northern Ireland, you see, well, the people in Northern Ireland, they're all Irish, they speak, the same language, they have the same culture, the same history, etc. They differ on one issue, and that's religion. And you have the Protestants and the Catholics who were fighting, and there was terrorism and bombings, and all of those things that you associate with what's going on now in many parts of the Muslim world. And it's not really inherent in the Protestant or the Catholic traditions, but there was a struggle there because of the particular history that resulted in the competition between these two groups for state control. Also outside of the Muslim world, you look at a very different conflict. Some of you might be less familiar with this one, but it's important to look at because it's a different line of differentiation. There was a separatist group in Spain known as the Basques. You ever heard of the Basques? They have great soup. No. All right. So they live in the Pyrenees, which is the northern part of the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. And they speak Basque. They have their own culture, their own history, their attachment to that piece of land. And as far as religion is concerned, they're all Catholic, same as the rest of Spain. They were engaged in a terrorist campaign for their independence, bombings and attacking civilians and everything, as part of a campaign to win their territorial independence. Recently, they finally gave up, and there's kind of a peace now in that region. But for many, many decades, there was a bloody conflict, and the line of demarcation was not religion; it was the other markers for what is a national struggle or national identity. We have 1 million people who died in Rwanda. Who were the competing forces there? The Hutus and the Tutsis, right? So they all look like they're black African to us, but they had different tribal identities. They had different ways of identifying themselves and the other. And so this resulted in, and again, they were put together within a certain border by colonial forces. Maybe the lines that were drawn didn't take into consideration the territorial integrity of different identity groups. Nonetheless, they fought. It spiraled out of control. 1 million people died. 1 million people. I mean, the numbers are just 1 million human souls perished in that struggle. So now taking it to the issue of, and I'll shorten my comments and end here, but I was recently on a panel with the head of the intelligence from the U.S. Congress. His name was Adam Schiff. He's now in the minority community. He's a Democrat. And the head of RAND Corporation, it's a think tank based in Santa Monica, their counterterrorism division, Brian Jenkins, he's been head of that division since 1971, the year that I was born. And we were on a panel discussing the crisis of ISIS. And it was a very long format. It was an NPR program in Southern California. And for 45 minutes, the discussion surrounded ISIS and this and the geopolitics in Saudi Arabia and Iran and regional, plus the former Sunni Ba'athist and the Shiites and the Kurds and this and that and Turkey. And then the question came to me, what is the role of religion? And I said, well, it's really a geopolitical struggle and oil and everything else. And Congressman Adam Schiff and Brian Jenkins from RAND looked at me and they nodded their head and said, we agree with him fully. It's not really a religious thing, because if you think about it, what are the religious divisions there? You have the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds. And the Kurds are? They're Sunni Muslims, right? All right, you guys are more educated than most audiences. All right. So there's Sunni Muslims. The Arabs and that are in the area that's controlled by ISIS, they're also Sunni Muslims. So it's not a religious divide there, but again, going back to that rubric, they're Kurdish, they speak Kurdish, they have their own history, their own territory. Their territory is actually divided between Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey. I mean, Sykes-Picot, the British and the French who divided up the land, I don't know what they had against the Kurds, but You know, they did not get a justice in that division. But anyway, they have their own issue. And then the Arabs, the minority now, they're only what, 20%, the Arab Sunnis, they used to be in charge because Saddam Hussein was one of them, right? And so they lost that. The former Baathists teamed up with some other people. They probably got some foreign money support from other regional powers, and they're trying to give pushback to the Shiite majority. It's very complicated, but it has to do with geopolitics. So it's a long-winded answer for a very important question, but I wanted to take that length simply to say that religion, the Islamic faith is no different. Religion, when done right, is an inspiration that calls us to our higher selves. It's a powerful force because it gives us meaning and purpose, but it's also something that can be instrumentalized and utilized by people who have nefarious intentions for political purposes, and they can scare people into saying your religion is in danger and defend it tooth and nail and put your life on the line, and et cetera, and it can be invoked in a powerful way to get people to engage in conflict. So it's my aspiration as a person who takes religion seriously that religion is not part of the problem, but can be part of the solution if we take religion seriously and what the teachings of the religion are. Because people, ISIS, for example, is so extreme that even Al-Qaeda called ISIS way too extreme. All right, so when Al-Qaeda is calling you extreme, you know you're really extreme. And what they do and what they teach is a direct contradiction to everything that's in the Quran.
Thank you very much. Brother Jihad Turk really very articulate and very knowledgeable, and he did a very good job. I do agree that geopolitical issues are the primary cause. However, I will actually share an African story. By the way, it's great to see you all, my friends and colleagues, and from many places. It's wonderful. Thank you for coming, those who are, and we'll get a time to catch up later on. But I'm from Tanzania. I went to school in Tanzania, grew up with people who were not believing in religion, people who are Catholics and Protestants. I didn't know the difference between them, but when I went to a Catholic church, I knew the Anglican church, of course, they were new. Hindus, Shia Muslims, Ishnashri Muslims, Shia Ismaili Muslims, Sunni Muslims. There's a variety. And the thing that was in Tanzania was that it was a multi-racial, multi-faith society. And when I leave Tanzania and I come out, by the way, I did live in 5 years in Pakistan. And even when I lived in Pakistan, I didn't really see the Sunni-Shia divide that I see right now. Right now, I see here the stories of people being butchered, right? I mean, Hazara Muslims being butchered because they just go to pilgrimage to Iran, and when they come back, they're butchered. Literally, like when you see, meat on goat and cattle, they get butchered, and it's like horrific scenes. So what is this? So although religion is not the root cause, but the point is that some people are victim to the cause that are not really properly managed. It is our responsibility when somebody is inciting people to indiscriminate slogans of death. We must say no. This is not the way we live in 21st century. When we actually have radical ideologies emanating, when you call somebody an infidel, we said no. That's not what it is. Even the people who are not Muslims, they are Ahlul Kitab. They're not Kafirs. They are Ahlul Kitab. They are people of the book, people of the Torah, people of Bible, and so forth. And I think that there's a responsibility here. There's a responsibility from leaders. Now, I agree with Brother Jihad that, look, there are many reasons why people will divide. And we had a classic case we lived through in South Africa. In South Africa, that country was falling apart. The government in South Africa could not contain violence. They went and said, we're going to go and liberate Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was prone to violence. He did bad things, and he was jailed for 27 years. At least that's what the regime thought he did bad things. He was a freedom fighter. 27 years of his life. Imagine a person going through prime years of life. He comes out of the jail, doesn't have the bitterness. When his fellow people ask him to go and resort to violence, he says, no. We will create room for everybody in South Africa. Right? So whilst these issues we see of things are not really religiously driven, there's a responsibility on the religious leadership to make sure that we have messages of peace. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we went through a horrific thing here in the United States, 9/11, right? There was a very bad thing. 19 people went into things, 15 of them from Saudi Arabia, right? what happened? When I came back from the East Coast driving back, there were police officers, there were members from churches guarding our halls of prayers. They said, no, we will protect you, right? Because they felt that they, as faith leaders, it was their responsibility to bring calm and not let the extremists take over. So there's a role here to be played, and I just want to add that perspective.
Okay, so should I use the thing? So
Turn it on.
I will follow. It seems that there may be some kind of disagreements in terms of kind of causes, whether it's kind of political, whether it's kind of geopolitical, or maybe some form of interpretation of religion, or some religious leaders may be kind of responsible about that. There may be disagreements about that, but at the same time it seems that both speakers agree that religious leaders have responsibility. Even if religion is not part of the problem or the cause, religion can be, or religious interpretations can be part of the solution. And I want to follow from that particular line of argument. Given the fact that now that the social media brings this extremist influence, spread extremist influence every corner of the world, and according to some security analyst estimates, about 25,000 young Muslims, mostly just from all over the world, joined to the rank of the ISIS. I want to ask our esteemed guest, if there is a young Muslim that you suspect who may have sympathies for ISIS, what will you tell him?
So, I run an Islamic graduate school, and we educate imams and religious leaders and youth directors and people who are really in leadership positions within mosques at the grassroots, dealing with the community. And so we need to prepare them, and we aim to prepare them to deal with exactly this question. To equip us to be able to do that, one of the things that I had the opportunity to do, I was contacted by the White House last year and invited to participate in a summit at the White House, which I did earlier this year, on countering violent extremism. And so we had the opportunity to meet with the heads of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, and senior people in the FBI and the intelligence community here in the United States, and learn from them what it is what is the messaging of ISIS. Because when we came in the room, there were a number of leaders from 3 major cities in the United States: Boston, because of the Boston bombing; Minnesota, because of the large number of Somali refugee or Somali community immigrants there from Somalia, who are recruited by Al-Shabaab to go back to, and some have also gone to Syria. And then Los Angeles, not in anticipation of what happened in San Bernardino, but because it's one of the largest Muslim communities in Southern California, in the United States. We have somewhere around 1 million Muslims in California, and about upwards of 750,000 in Southern California, 120 mosques, etc. And we're a very diverse group. So we were asked to participate in this summit to talk about best practices in building resilient communities and messaging that would counter violent extremist messaging, etc. So when we came together in the meetings in the run-up to the White House summit, we were asked by the intelligence community, have you seen the recruitment videos online that ISIS puts out? And I said, no, my name is Jihad. I do not search ISIS terrorist videos. So I have no idea what those recruitment videos are like. And so, but we were curious and said, we'll show you. So they showed us a couple of videos, and they were, they were some marketing people. And by the way, in the room were also Hollywood producers. There were people from who combat white supremacist groups, Southern Poverty Law Center. It was a very diverse group of people that were there together. And what was apparent was they had a very slick messaging campaign, very slick. Like they were like the PR people from these Hollywood companies were kind of impressed, very impressed with their approach, their marketing, the PR, the psychology, their target audience, how they were reaching out to these people. And the intelligence community also shared that ISIS tweets over 90,000 tweets every single day. 90,000 tweets every single day. And they said that that there are three, and we asked them what the profile was for the people who, I'll tell you about the video in a second, but what's the profile of people that's attracted to these messages? They said there were three things that stand out about them. Number one, they have a cognitive opening. And we said, what is that? And they said a cognitive opening could be anywhere from a mental illness to having emotional instability, being poor, having feeling marginalized because of racism, or being an immigrant, coming from a traumatic experience like it was a war zone from overseas, etc. You have what's called a cognitive opening, meaning that you're ill-adjusted in your circumstances. You're vulnerable, you're at risk, if you will. Number two is you have a grievance, and that grievance could be U.S. foreign policy, droning, warfare, or it could be this notion that, and then we said that they said that there's no common grievance except for one. The only shared, and there's only about 200 people from the United States. There's 25,000 from around the world, but only about 200 from the United States. I think there's many more open investigations, but about 200 people since this campaign began to recruit Western Muslims to join ISIS. Only about 200, which is a very small number. If we're talking about the number of Muslims in the United States being somewhere in the ballpark of 6-7 million, 200 is, someone can do the math for me really quickly, I'm in the humanities, so they can count up to 40 and that's it. All right, so we have an engineer right next to me, so he'll crunch the numbers for me. But, so it's a very small number, but they said that the only common grievance that they have is that they all bought into the notion that America is at war with Islam. And they said that, and that's why when Ted Koppel wrote an article the other day, he said the #1 recruitment tool for ISIS is what Donald Trump is saying. Because he's promoting the notion that America is at war with Islam and against Islam, etc. And the people who go over, it's not that they were knowledgeable about Islam. They caught these 3 teenage kids from, I think, Colorado going over to ISIS, and they discovered that they had ordered, just a couple of weeks before going over there, a book from Amazon. I think Amazon, you guys familiar with Amazon? It's this company that, it's based here? Okay.
That's in South
a book from Amazon that entitled Islam for Dummies. All right, so it's not like they were inspired by the religion. They didn't know anything about the religion, all right? So it's more to do with this identity issue. The third thing that's common amongst their profile is that they were contacted and reached out to directly, that they felt like they were somehow recruited into a part of a bigger cause, and there was a brotherhood or a sisterhood or fraternity, or they had a place or meaning or something, and that's why those 90,000 tweets are important. Also important to notice is that they are not contacted through your mosque. Your mosque is actually the front lines against that, because the mosque is a place where American Muslim identity, as was pointed out by our moderator, is the idea of being well adjusted in both identities. You could be fully American and fully Muslim, that idea is promoted. These people are marginalized from the Muslim American community as well as from society at large, and they're vulnerable because they're targeted online, and that's why Al-Qaeda used to do the one-on-one recruiting. ISIS is a social media recruitment model where they just throw out all kinds of tweets, and anyone who then responds, then they go to another medium and they do individual one-on-one kind of recruitment and encouragement for people to then join. So it's very scary. The intelligence community says, we need your help, what do we do? And they said our strategy, and that's why President Obama refuses to call them Muslim terrorists. He says we don't want to legitimate their claim that they're Muslim. Terrorism doesn't belong to any religion and it's against all of them. But also we don't want to promote the notion that America is at war with Islam. So even though he's getting a lot of heat from it, even the Republican, staunchly Republican members of the intelligence community, I asked them when we were at the White House, I said, what do you think about this strategy? They go, I agree with it. Because they're not in it for the political wedge issue. They're actually trying to look out for the national security interests of the United States. And so, to answer your question, because you asked me a question at some point, I think, what would I say to a young person, given all of that? I remember the question, I'm an academic, so we can go on tangents and come right back, all right. What would I say, and what have I said, because I also led a mosque with a very large youth population, and we did have people back in the day who, I was approached by their parents and my kids watching some radical stuff, and not that he was ever planning anything, but he said he's being influenced by this these kinds of ideas that he's finding online, I said, well, let's embrace him. Let's bring him in and make him feel like he's part of the community, number one. Number two, let's educate him and give him a pathway where he can express his patriotic, American attitude, which means that you can be critical of domestic and foreign policy. That's part of what it means to be an American. And let's give him the tools and the skill set to express that in a way that's constructive and not, feel so marginalized that he would then
whatever. And the child is going to miss out education. Might miss out elementary education, might miss out middle school or high school. There's barriers at each step of the way. And then what the children happens is basically they go become street children. And these children either end up begging or stealing. So now let me move my story to Bukoba. Bukoba is an hour flight from Mwanza, a northwest part of Tanzania. Last year, 2014, I went to the mosque of my ethnic community, the Indian Koja community in the mosque. And they have nice food, they welcome and everything. And there was a person that I met, a local native African black-skinned person who was there, and he said, hey, I asked him, let's come to the mosque. I said, I can't come to the mosque because I'm not welcome there. Why? Because they tell us you only come to eat food. And I said, look, the person who really should be getting food is more him than me because he is in need. So then I stayed with him for a couple of days, and I asked him, I said, what's the deal? What are your plans? What are you doing? Well, I'm going to go to Lahore. I said, Lahore, what is Lahore? Where is Lahore? So Lahore in Pakistan. I said, okay, interesting. What are you going to do then? I'm going to join a madrasa. Right? So this is really a first-hand experience, but this person did not have a place, a function to play. He was not welcomed by the local community. He didn't have a job. He probably missed out on education, and there were people who were recruiting him. Again, this is a failure at multiple levels, right? So what do? And I think this is really, I turn to the Muslim community, right? Because whether we like it or not, we are under focus, and we have to inspire children, youth in our community. And I believe as Muslim Americans, we have a contribution to make to America. This is a great country. We have a lot of freedom. We have opportunity to excel. However, the excellence that's emphasized in America is individual excellence. And we know from our faith, Islamic faith, when Prophet was asked, what is Islam? He says, worship Allah, worship Almighty God, and serve your mankind. If there was one contribution that we could make to America that says, look, you as a Muslim American citizen, you will get better by making your fellow citizen better. And that is your success. If you could actually create that vision. We need a very clear vision. Look, I came to Microsoft. Why? When I want to have a computer in every desk in every part of the world. People join Google, organize wealth information. As a Muslim community, we need to have a very captivating vision that will compete with ISIS. But the vision also has to be backed up with solid, concrete programs of education, of serving the people, of functioning in society. That's what we need. That's where we, as a Muslim community, need to come together, be able to articulate this message, and forget about our sectarian or cultural or whatever device it may be, and really focus on what the Prophet says, serve mankind.
Very good. If I could just add one additional thing. Round of applause. All right. One of the things that stands out amongst the people who go and get recruited, etc., is that young people sometimes are they're adrift, they're looking for purpose in life. And the best purpose, the most fulfilling purpose, is to be useful in service of humanity. And so that's why one of the first things that I did when I first started as the imam in Southern California is establish, as part of an interfaith effort, by the way, a food pantry. We serve over 300 families every single Saturday, and that program is run by our young people. So giving young people a chance to serve other people and feel like they have purpose in life, I think that's one thing that religion can do in general, and that community can do, regardless of your faith tradition, can do. That's the best service we can do for our youth is to put them at the service of humanity.
Thank you. This discussion kind of reminded me that President Obama's presidential address about this issue, I think, which was about kind of 10 days ago. One thing kind of struck me in that talk, which I really enjoyed listening and hearing President Obama making a kind of a strong plea, that he asked Muslim American communities to do more to combat violent extremism. Can you tell me what do you want American Muslim communities to do? Maybe they are doing some things that you really like, but at the same time there may be issues that you think that they may not be doing enough, that they should pay more attention. I will give Jawad first.
I'm eager on this one. First of all, I want to let you know, I sent my email before Obama spoke, okay, just for the record, okay, and so I want to make sure that I also before Donald Trump spoke, okay. Here's the thing, I think that building on what we said, there's a couple of, I like to actually not really think here and invent something out of thin air. That's not going to work, right? There's successful models, there's a lot of people who've done good work. There's a particular organization, building on what we were just discussing before, United Muslims Foundation, based in Florida, a young lady by the name of Masuma Virji. She's dedicated. The thing that I found very inspirational about what she does is she brings people from diverse backgrounds together. In the whole of Sonoma County, whatever the county there, she's got all the imams working together in unity. She's working across faith lines. They are bringing together to building understanding, like the discussion we're having here today, building understanding. But she doesn't stop there. She goes out there. There's a website called teensentral.net. Teensentral.net. Teensentral.net is a website that actually enables troubled teenagers to go there and talk to a counselor. So when they are going through challenges in life, they probably can get counsel and not really get pulled away by ISIS or somebody like this, right? It's really a proactive thing. She says, okay, she wants to actually do breakfast clubs. What is breakfast clubs? Basically, she enables immigrant Muslims or people who are new to the community. Twice a week, they have breakfast together. Twice a month, they have gatherings together. They sit down, they talk about the issues. They help them with the food. They help them with whatever the challenges they're going on, right? Another thing that she does, she works in the local schools, in this Seminole County, low-income schools, making sure that they can excel at reading. A lot of these immigrants are coming in, they really do not know how to read. They cannot get the mentoring from their parents. I don't know how many of you have been to diversity workshops. They ask you to take us one step back, two step back, how many books you had. If you go through these things, a lot of these things do not have the opportunity. So she's trying to actually create that opportunity, making sure. And then, when the school year starts, it gives them a backpack or so forth. United Muslims Foundation, Masuma Virji, single-handedly person. I talked to her this morning, and that's why I know all this kind of thing. I was on a separate discussion, I said, wow, this is called serendipity. You're just coming over at the right time. So this is really a very, very important part. It's all part of making sure that people coming in. And by the way, our story here in the United States is different. I feel that I'm assimilated, but other opportunities that people like me have is through my education, through my work. A lot of the people don't have the education, they don't have the work, they don't have the opportunity to assimilate in society like I did. So we, Muslim community, have come together and create this opportunity like Masuma is doing with the United Muslims Foundation in Florida. Okay? That's not all. There's another thing. I think it's very important. I don't know, maybe Brother Jihad knows this because he's got more statistics of it. I don't know how many mosques we have and how many mosques have imams who are serving those mosques. And how many of those imams are really indigenous imams who are in our social context, understand our challenges and our opportunities, and able to provide chaplaincy or pastoral care that is appropriate for our environment. So there are two organizations. I only thought it was going to be one, but I found out when I talked to Jihad today, there's two. But what I was going to say, Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham, UK. They're trying to actually create research, education, an imam program which is geared to have imams who would serve in the United Kingdom. And we've actually talked to them and I've actually visited them. And in fact, we support some scholarships over there. But I found out that that's actually what Jihad is doing at Bayan. Because we do need to actually have imams who are here. And I know that Harvard Seminary, one of the oldest seminaries in the East Coast, they also have a chaplaincy program. So we got to actually support this chaplaincy program so they can provide the pastoral care they need, they can provide the leadership we need, and perhaps you can tell us what you're doing, and that would be another thing that I think that we need to do. Two things, serve and educate.
Yeah, so, I'm an academic by training, but I was recruited to serve as an imam of the largest and oldest mosque in Los Angeles. And it was kind of taking me in a different trajectory than I was originally on. But I thought, well, I wanted to go into academia so that I could bridge the gap of understanding between, going to academia specifically in the subject of Islam, to bridge the cultural and civilizational gaps between America and Islamic civilization, Islamic world, Muslim world, but also provide opportunity for young American Muslims who are in university, usually studying engineering or medicine, to also learn about the faith in that context, an academic approach to Islam. So I was going into education, but then when the Islamic Center said, well, you know, we would like for you to serve as our imam so that you could educate our youth, that you could educate our community, that you could also be civically engaged and reach out and develop a coalition with the interfaith community and civic society. So I thought, well, this is kind of on the same lines as education, and just more from a community grassroots level. So I began working as a local imam. But what I quickly realized when I became active at the national level and met with my colleagues from around Southern California, and then engaged with a researcher who did a survey in 2011 on American mosques, he discovered that there were over 2,000 mosques in the United States. I think there's probably around 2,500 now. Only 44% have a full-time imam, but 93% of those imams, those religious leaders, were born, raised, and educated abroad. An additional 4% were born and raised here but educated abroad. So only 3% were born, raised, and educated here. Having studied in seminary in both Saudi Arabia and Iran, you know, I'm aware of how those institutions don't teach critical thinking skills. They also are very narrow in their theological approach. And the community here in the United States is very diverse. 2/3 of our community are immigrants, but from 80 different countries. 1/3, almost a third of our community are African-American converts who came through the Nation of Islam, which is a black nationalist movement, but became mainstream in 1975 when their leader died. The son took over and said, we're just going to join the mainstream American Muslim, the mainstream Muslim community. And so we still have a third of our community African-American. You know, people like Muhammad Ali came through that movement, Malcolm X, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so when I noticed that there was this challenge for those imams, my colleagues around the country, and even in Southern California, to connect to youth, to be able to lead their communities to be civically engaged, and to help their community develop partnerships across faith lines, I said, let us create our own indigenous seminary, American Muslim institution, that is well adjusted in our identity as American and as Muslims, and that we feel ourselves to be part of the pluralism that makes this country strong. E pluribus unum, right? Out of many, we are one. And so we have this identity, this authenticity in terms of our connection to our faith, but we're well adjusted for the modern world in our approach, in our outlook, in our mentality, and in our academic rigor and scope. And so working at Bayan, Claremont, or establishing Bayan, Claremont as the seminary to train relevant youth leaders, individuals who can make Islam relevant and give young people purpose in life. This is one of the projects that I'm dedicating my life to now, and that's one thing. But I'll say another thing as well. The Islamic Center of Southern California, you said, is a pioneering institution, and it's the oldest mosque in LA, and we were fortunate to have some visionary leaders. One of the institutions that came out of the Islamic Center was the Muslim Public Affairs Council. And the Muslim Public Affairs Council established almost 30 years ago. It's an organization that helps young people take on civic responsibility by participating in the public sphere, in media, in public policy, in government, and in telling our narrative in our own words. The most common question I get when I speak publicly is, oh, you sound like a reasonable guy. You're the only Muslim who has that perspective, because I know that because I've heard everyone else on the television that they're foaming at the mouth and shouting death to America or something the like thereof. So you're kind of a lone individual and are not representative of your community. And the average American Muslim is saying, how come our voice isn't being heard? When Trump says what he says, and then the other extreme voice on the Muslim side, and where's the moderate voice, or where's the majoritarian voice of the Muslim community? It's not represented. One of my colleagues is an author who used to work for a Gallup poll. And Gallup is an institution that does surveys, as you know, like Pew and Gallup and others. Rasputin, I think, is a newer one. According to my colleague, Dick Cheney, you guys remember him? He was at the White House in his undisclosed location in the White House shortly after 9/11, and he said, someone said, well, what does the Muslim world think about 9/11? And he goes, well, how would I know? It's not like we have a Gallup poll. Well, the head of Gallup was in that elite room, right, that elite gathering, and he said, all right, well, let's do something about it. So he embarked on a 6-year study to statistically assess what the Muslim world thinks about terrorism and this and that and the other. That book was published about 8 years ago by Georgetown University, by a professor there and by my colleague. The professor is John Esposito, and my colleague is Dalia Mugahed. And the book is entitled, it's an analysis of that Gallup survey. Who speaks for Islam? What 1 billion Muslims really think. And actually it's 1.7 billion Muslims. It's 1/4 of the world's population. Statistically representing what every Muslim thinks, what every community thinks, every country, it's broken down by country, etc. And what you find there is that Muslims are less inclined to support terrorism than Americans are. So, it's not that, this notion that, I saw another, a meme on my social media. A meme is just like something that's gone viral, not to do with diseases. So there's this thing called the internet and no, I'm just kidding. All right, so there's, they put a pie chart, 1.7 billion Muslims, and then they said ISIS, 40,000 or 25,000, it's like a pin drop. Al-Qaeda, just a little tiny drop. You can't even see it on this, on this pie chart. The number of people who are either part of ISIS or support of ISIS is so minuscule, it's not even, it's like 0.00, and then there were some numbers. So the point is that the Muslim Public Affairs Council trains people to speak the narrative of the American Muslim community so that our voice is heard, because currently it's not heard. And that's why you find people who buy into this narrative that America's at war with Islam, because all you find are talking heads that make it seem as such. And so we need to go into Hollywood and produce movies and popular culture and become empowered to speak in our own voice and become known who we are. Just yesterday I received on my social media a meme from Funny or Die, which is a comedy sketch show. And it was, there was a Meet a Muslim show where someone gets to actually meet a Muslim person directly, and it's very comical. But the point is that there's all of these stereotypes, but Muslims only make up less than 1% of the population. It behooves us to really get out there and be known either personally or to develop the relationships with our neighbors so that they can also help us represent the mainstream of our community.
If I can add one more thing. I think this media thing is so important. And I actually talked to a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters, and they would say, oh, the media is not fair. There we go again. I think, as a Muslim community, and as any kind of community, as any kind of person, we cannot really be living in a victimhood all the time, right? We are responsible, right? For example, if you look at the United Kingdom, people have been settled there for 50, 60 years. In 50, 60 years, you could make decent progress, right? If Rupert Murdoch can start from somewhere on the media, so I believe that we need, in America, we need AMPM, American Muslim Public Media, right? And this is another pet project. I don't want to kind of take too much time here, but this is an important project that has to start, and we got to actually find broadcasters. We're going to learn from our colleagues in other NPR, other places, and how can we get going on this stuff. Because the discussion has to happen within the Muslim community, but be suitable for everybody to participate. Right now, I wonder what's going on when our Somali cab driver is taking us around, and we're hearing KVI radio, and hearing okay. Where does it belong, right? So this has to change, and the agents of change will be us, will be Muslims. We'll have to change. We'll have to figure it out. Now it's easy to say, it's easy to paint out, hey, we want to do great things. But where's the money? But I never think it's an issue of money. It's an issue of people willing to dedicate themselves with service, right? Because I believe, as a person of faith, I believe that the resources are there, but we got to come up with the right team. We got to find the traction, and God will give us the trajectory.
So I will ask one more question. I will ask the panelists to be kind of short because I also want to receive your questions. And this was a reminder, please write down the questions and send it to my way. My last question kind of deals with the previous question kind of dealt with the American Muslims' responsibility for countering terrorism. I think there is more responsibility on American Muslims' shoulder to counter the extremism. But at the same time, that lots of non-Muslim fellow Americans are also concerned about this. And I want to hear from the panelists. What can our fellow non-Muslim Americans help us, our co-workers, our friends, help us to, what do you want them to do to help us to counter violent extremism?
I'll be brief on this one. As I ended my last comment, we're a very small percent of the population. We could use your help in creating the spaces that can help amplify the voice of the average American Muslim. On Sunday, we had organized an event at the City Hall of Los Angeles City Hall, with the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, the mayor of San Bernardino, the mayor of Santa Monica, the mayor of Gardena, the mayor of Torrance, there was 10 mayors in Southern California who showed up on the halls of the steps of City Hall in order to join the Muslim American community, and we were probably around 1,000 of us there. And the name of the event was Muslims against extremism and Muslims against terrorism. And we had banners, and there was press coverage, and all the media was there. The media showed up because of all of the high profile. We had Edward James Olmos, who's an actor from Hollywood, who was there. So we had some star power, we had the political power, and we had the numbers. So the media showed up and it covered it. But if it was just us, the media wouldn't show up and cover it as much. And we know because we've tried doing that before. So having your help in creating the venues, being invited to a church, to a synagogue, to an interfaith gathering, to a civic forum, to Pacifica Institute, all right, to any venue that allows your average Muslim, doesn't have to be myself or Jawad Khaki, it could be any average Muslim who can just say, doesn't have to speak authoritatively, say, this is who I am, this is my life, this is what religion means to me, and puts a human face on the religion. 70%, according to Pew, 70% of Americans not only admit to knowing little to nothing about Islam, but they indicated that they have never, at least knowingly, met a Muslim. 70% of Americans say that they have never met a Muslim personally. So you can help us by creating the opportunities for us to be known directly.
And I think this is a great topic. Here's an article. Muslims must combat extremist cancer. See, and one of the criticisms I get from my non-Muslim friends, you guys, what are the voices in Islam that speak against this? Who are the people? This is an article by Fatullah Gulen on August 27, 2015, right? I hope, Thesjan, we can make this available on your website or other places, right? I think it's a great concept. Fatullah Gulen is a faith leader of a lot of Muslims in Turkey, right? She speaks about this stuff. He says, look, we should really we should denounce all this criminality that's going on. We should advocate human rights. We should really do right things in society. So as non-Muslims, I think, it'd be good to listen to these authentic voices rather than this rhetoric that's really very damaging. And when you hear the authentic voices, amplify them. We're very fortunate in Seattle. We've got the three amigos. Two of them are here. Imam Jamal Rahman, right? Rabbi is here. They are on the radio. How can we actually help them get the voices out? This is a great thing. And the other thing I would say is this. Look, I mean, as a Muslim, I feel violated, right? Because people have taken his name for jihad, my personal spiritual struggle, and use this in a derogatory way. Do not let this, because these people are criminals. They're not calling the Islamic State. They're not Islamic State of anything. They're criminal state. Let's call them for what it is. So when media does that, you have to call upon the media saying, don't do that, because you're helping ISIS. That's what you're doing. Do not allow stereotypings. But the most important thing is what Jihad says. Each one of us need to develop an ability to look into the eyes of a stranger and see a potential friend. How many of you here, for example, there were strangers to it, but I see friendly faces everywhere here, right? But it was strangers. I didn't really know whether this is going to be working out or not working out, but here we are, right? And this is not an easy journey. This is a long journey, right? I mean, we've been here, like, I got active here, not because, you know, I got a choice. I'm a software engineer. I'm not a pastor or imam or whatever it is, but I perform the function. And in fact, you know, after the Seattle Times article, believe me, somebody even wrote in the Seattle Times, say, hey, this guy's not an imam. He's a self-made proclaimed imam. He's divisive. Well, no, they don't even understand. Those people who wrote the article, they don't understand their own theology. By the way, this happened to be somebody from the Shia faith. And you can go to the thing. So I think it's very important as a Muslim large community non-Muslim understand what are the authentic voices, give those people the things. Last week, another good thing that happened in downtown Kirkland somewhere. I think it was in the Starbucks on the 85th Avenue. People just said, hey, I want to get to know my Muslim neighbor or whatever. And the people get together. They had a great call. Go to the Facebook thing. You will see a lot of positive things. We need more of that, right? People-to-people connections is what it is, right? And a lot of those people will not be able to communicate with you like people we might be able to. He does better than I can, right? But the thing is, we need to develop that ability, right? They have a lot of contributions to make. A lot of the refugees who are coming in from Syria, from Iraq, right, from Afghanistan, they're doctors and engineers and skilled people in on their way. They could be good assets for us, right? They could really revive our economy. They could help us think differently, right? We cannot really go after this the metaphor of a melting pot. We should adopt the salad pot. We want the tomato, the cucumber, the salad. You know, we want all that kind of stuff. You know, pluralist societies are not accidents of history. Right? Pluralist societies come about because everybody engages in creating this pluralism, right? And the thing about these slogans that are out there that we need to reject and fight is because they are not pluralistic. They're saying, if you don't believe like me, then you don't deserve to live. We need to reject that collectively.
So there are so many questions are coming. It seems that one line of argument is about not necessarily this kind of violent extremism, but maybe just how some Muslims may just necessarily engage with modernity about issues about democracy, about human rights, about kind of gender equality, and issues that what can we do? The questions then, the question that I want to ask the panelists is that occasionally we hear about that a reform in Islam that being articulated by some intellectuals like Ursi, and I want to ask, where do you stand? Does Islam need a reform to make it much more compatible with the modernity and what modernity brings as important values, gender equality, democracy, and human dignity?
Islam, I wouldn't say need reform. Muslims need reform. And what I mean by that is, if you look to Islamic history, I mean, there was a time of a term that you might not be familiar with called the convivencia, which was a time in Andalusian Spain in which, under Muslim rule, Christians and Jews flourished. And it was one of what Maimonides, Rambam as he's affectionately called within the Jewish community, and I visited his grave recently, he called it the golden age of Judaism. Because there was this sense of openness. You know, now all of these Christians in Iraq are being persecuted. You know when they came to Iraq? 1400 years ago. They didn't come there, the Muslims came there, and they've been living, their churches are there. I mean, 10% of the population of Egypt is Christian. You know, 10% or more of the Syrian population are Christian. They've been there for all of those 1400 years under Islamic rule. When Islam spread to Egypt and Syria, they were majority Christian populations, and they remained majority Christian populations for over 400 years. And it was only through a slow process of demographic shift and intermarriage and et cetera, that the populations became majority Muslim, not through compulsion. And so, you know, there's this heritage that we can draw upon and say, this is how we can understand our faith. This is how we have understood it in the past in a way that is really compatible with modernity. Muslims need to be reformed because there are Muslim societies now where women can't drive in Saudi Arabia. There are Muslim societies in which there's honor killings. There's all kinds of things completely against the faith, by the way. Even what ISIS is doing, completely against the faith. Muslims, for the most part, in a lot of the parts of the world, have general illiteracy. I mean, the illiteracy rate in Egypt is 40%, and it's even higher in other parts of the Muslim world. And there's tremendous poverty and just lack of education. And religious literacy is even higher. So, and that ignorance allows people to interpret the religion in a way that they're not held accountable. So Muslim institutions need reform, Islam itself doesn't need to reform, but Muslims need to approach it with the lens of modernity. And that's our vision statement at our university is a world that understands Islam in a modern context.
You see, there's a beautiful verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Condition of a community will not change until the individual transform themselves. And we do need to transform. And I think this transformation happens. Now, in terms of Islam needing reform, I think what is a faith? In any faith tradition, there's a lot of rituals. I mean, if I go to a synagogue, there's particular rituals. If I go to a church, if I go to a Catholic church, there's one kind of ritual, a lot of sitting and standing down, right? I mean, but it's good things, all good things. There are rituals in other things. Imam Jummah is probably many other kind of rituals as he do the interfaith reach out. Speaking as a Shia Muslim, we have a lot of rituals. We have to ask ourselves, are these rituals relevant into our context? Because rituals are not bad in itself, but rituals have to have relevance and have to connect with the human mission, right? Rituals, for example, in the month of Muharram and Safar, which are the first 2 months of the Islamic calendar, the Shia Muslims commemorate the martyrdom of the grandson of the Prophet. There's processions, you can see probably one of the largest gatherings or pilgrimages took place in Iraq last week. 20 million, 30 million people go and do the pilgrimage. The question really is, there's a lot of energy being spent. I'm not saying it's bad, people do this, I'm not stopping, but the question is, how does it connect? For example, if we have this ritual, it doesn't really talk about the problems in our society, right? Then what purpose is this ritual, right? By the way, these processions take place in New York, it take place in Washington, D.C. There was a procession there. Well, I think that effort that was spent could be much better spent in a setting like this. We say, instead of doing a procession, we'll invite people and say, let's have a conversation, right? So I think that there is rituals have come in. Haile Selassie, what was the emperor of Ethiopia, another African kind of thing that comes to my mind. He said, look, religion is a set of rules, right, and practices to help people develop spirituality. And sometimes it becomes corrupt, it becomes political and power grab, right? We need to make sure that our rituals help us develop spirituality that not only connects with God Almighty, but helps us connect with fellow human being. Because we are all connected. Each one of us has got a spirit of God in us. Right? We need to actually enliven that. And we find that if our practices, our rituals, do not enliven the spirit of God in us, we should question whether we need to do that. Right? This is why this business about going to a prayer, why I've prayed, and the prayer, imams and the people correct me, prayer is a mirage of the mu'min. What is the mirage? Mirage was the event that took place when Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heavens. As Muslims believe that. So when we go and pray 5 times a day, our spirits are elevated. If it's elevated, I question, what is the right thing to do? Should I not be praying for longevity of humanity, for the human advancements, or should I be chanting slogans of death? Those things are not Islamic. Those things we have to reject. Yeah, there are people who say, oh yeah, you don't understand. We don't have a good translation with the down of the shy, so it's a cultural things. But the point is that is being misunderstood, right? And who knows? Who knows which person might misconstrue this? Not only that it's offensive and rude, who knows that it could be misconstrued by somebody, right? And it moves him to some action. I don't think any of the religious leaders would want to have that on their back, because that somebody did this death to these things. So when we talk about reform, it's really a reform about the rituals that we have, which really don't have the foundation. Because if you look at Islam, Islam is a set of rules of universal values. It's about enjoining peace and pursuing justice, serving your fellow mankind, right? I mean, making sure that you are really not consumed in success of this world. You're preparing yourself for the spiritual development, for the next world.
So, a couple also questions were kind of deal with the American politics. As some of you know, that there was today that the Republican candidates has a kind of debate, and that at least one person in the kind of audience identify himself as just like, well, I'm Republican, I'm conservative. That doesn't mean that I support Donald Trump. And what my questions to the kind of panelists is that 93% of the American Muslims in the last elections voted for the Democrats. And given this kind of sometimes anti-Islamic remarks from some of the Republican candidates, how we can reach out as Muslim Americans, but also the people who care about the future of American Muslims or well-being of the American Muslims, how we can reach out the Republican Party or part of the people, group of the people who support for the Republican Party, reach them out and engage them and work with them.
This isn't the Republican debate right here?
In the last election, I was really upset. I was really upset. I did vote for Obama in the first election. I was upset. I was upset because, we passed the healthcare reform, right? This country is of 300 million people. And there's a representation of what, 40-50% is Republicans, 50-50. Not one single Republican supporting the healthcare reform doesn't sit well with me because it impacts everybody. We need to have a buy-in. So I said, actually, I'm going to go out there, vote for Ron Paul, So I went to the caucus in Sammamish, right? I went there because, at the end of the day, the Republican kind of theme appeals to me somewhat, right? Family values, less government, no taxation, empower the individual. It's kind of good. Okay, so I went to the Republican things. When I went in there, it was kind of interesting. They said, okay, guys, caucus, let's write down all our candidates. Just put down. I say, guys, can we just have a discussion about this? No. Just write it down. This is the list. We're going to vote for. Let's vote. Let's vote for the delegates. Let's vote for the delegates. Okay. Well, I want to be delegate. Can you be at all the meetings? I can't because I have commitment. Well, then we can't have you. You must be at all the meetings. Okay. What are the issues? Well, write down all the issues. We'll write down the issues. So it didn't sit well with me as a Democratic person, but because democracy is all about discussing and having a debate and being informed and being educated from your fellow things. So I actually went and talked to the head of the Republican caucus in Sammamish. I said, look, this looks like there's more democracy in Iran than we have here because at least they have a discussion, right? And his response was, well, I'm so glad you're here. We need the color. Don't give up. And that's exactly the point. We should not give up. We should engage. Right? There's no point talking to people who agree with you, right? I think we need to reach out and bridge, because fundamentally we have to have this faith that every human being is a good human being, right? That's what God created us. It's because we are all creations of God, and God wants us to be good, and He wants everything good for us. So even somebody who is really not believing or saying the things we agree with, we should find a way to bridge that, to have this discussion. It may be tough, it may be challenging, but that's what we do. So in this Republican debate, all of us collectively, need to figure out, how can we have a meaningful, rational debate? I don't think all these Republicans that are saying, get all these Muslims, don't let them in, whatever, are wacky. They're not. At the same time, they have real, genuine fear. And how can we actually manage that fear, right? So we have to engage that discussion. And that's what democracy is. Great things in life are not pretty, right? Democracy is one of them. It's not pretty, it's hard work.
So I was involved in a conversation. One of the largest conservative voting blocs is the evangelical community. And I've been in conversation with some major evangelical pastors over the last number of years. The Islamic Center was in close conversation with Rick Warren, who hosted a presidential debate back in the day, in an earlier election run. Saddleback Church in Southern California. But more recently, just about a month and a half ago, I was invited to the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The night before this event, we had a dinner, 200 imams from around the country and 200 evangelical pastors. Now, 200 mega churches, right? So evangelical pastors. That's a huge demographic. The last 3 years, we've been engaged with imams and pastors around the country, getting them to know one another. Bob Roberts from Texas is one of the leading figures as part of this movement. And his attitude is that, listen, it's not very Christian-like to hate your neighbor. We're supposed to love our neighbor. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor, right? So he said what Trump's saying is not very Christian-like, right? But yet all of these evangelicals are kind of getting behind them. And he said, listen, this is not our way for two reasons. It's not part of our tradition. And number two, we want to convert you to evangelical Christianity, and we're not going to do a good job at that. And he was only half joking, if at all. not going to be successful in doing that if we're pushing you away. He literally said this. Now, what was fascinating was that there was an evangelical research firm that surveyed American evangelical pastors around the country. All of this is online, or you can Google it. What he shared with us, and that the research is also online, what he shared with us is that your average American, yes, has, I think upwards of 69% of Americans admit to having a negative impression of Islam and Muslims. Evangelical pastors, off the chart, right? For every category of kind of, either having a bigoted or negative idea or attitude about Islam and Muslims, evangelical pastors, and they surveyed all of these pastors across the United States, was even worse. So he said, this is a bit of a mea culpa. I mean, this is the reality of our community. We need to change that. And the way we're going to change that is by developing these partnerships, these relationships, one-on-one. And so they actually started bringing together pastors and imams from across the country. And they would spend 3 days in a retreat in Texas where, I kid you not, their idea of spending good time together was going and teaching Muslims to shoot guns. And they're Republicans, and I don't think they were thinking of the optics of this. Evangelical pastors training Muslim imams to shoot guns. I did not go. My name is Jihad. But some of my colleagues did. But the point is, we signed a document after 2 days. After this comment, we signed a pact, a pledge, saying on the Christian, for both of us, but really it was focused on the Christian side, that we will not promote Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry in our houses of worship, and we will not stand for that. And also, we all pledged, but primarily on the Muslim side, that we will do all that we can, although we're somewhat limited in our power here in the West, but we will do all that we can to promote religious freedom so that Christianity and every religion has have the same rights in Muslim majority countries as do Muslims here in the West. And so we signed this pledge. I'm a signatory on it, and all of these 200 Christian evangelical pastors signed it. So there's some hope, all right, but there's still a lot of work to do. But I think that making those relationships and not giving up and making yourself uncomfortable. As people, we tend to surround ourselves with what's familiar and comfortable. As people of religion, we should be inspired by our faith to continuously be comfortable with not being comfortable, by pushing ourselves into out of our comfort zone and getting to know one another and crossing over to the other, however we define that, and making that relationship work.
I think fear is a big issue here. And I want to relate to you a funny story, and hopefully. In 2001 or 2, I was speaking in a church, like 500 people. And there was this question comes up, so do you guys have an army? I said, yeah, we are the world's largest army. We even have a commander-in-chief. His name is George W. Bush. So we need to figure out. I've actually been to Republican, local meetings here. I do need to show the Democrat one of these days, okay? But this is really an issue for us. How do we also? The point is, how do we also train people of the Muslim or the foreign background to participate in this process, right? I think a lot of voter education is required, right? CARE, American Council of American Islamic Relations, they do a fantastic job. They build a relationship with electoral representatives in Olympia and so forth. And I think we need to do more of that. We need to educate the people. A lot of the times, people are not really familiar with the American process. Right? Well, they say, okay, well, everything from our community, from the Muslim community. Well, they think, if you're the leadership, Obama has to do everything. Well, Obama can't do anything, right? Even your congressman cannot do anything. I've met with Dr. Susan Dilpenny, Reverend Andrew Larson and I, and Kendra David, I believe is still here. We went to David Reichert and Susan Dilpenny. And they said, look, keep on doing what you're doing. This is about issues of Middle East justice, peace project. They said, keep on doing this stuff. You build grassroots opinion, and then, we can express the will of the people. That's how the democratic process works. So there's a lot of work we have to do in the Muslim community, right, on how we educate what the process is, and how do we engage? How do we engage our neighbors? How do we engage our elected officials and so forth?
Thank you. Another maybe kind of last kind of question, because I want to also kind of give a little time that, because I'm not going to be able to make justice all the questions, and I'm sure that the panelists are going to stick around so that you can ask your questions. So my last question is this, maybe a little bit more kind of personal, and is that as you are taking a very strong public stand against extremism and being very vocal about that, do you receive any threats, or some people call you names and other things, and how do you deal with them? And also, as a kind of concluding, kind of tell us, these are trying times, what gives you hope as a Muslim, as an American? Thank you.
So I'm very public about combating violent extremism, terrorism, etc. My name is Jihad Turk. I serve as imam of this large mosque. I give, sermons about it. I'm outspoken. I'm quoted in the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, etc., etc., etc. I get no pushback. I get no pushback from within my community. Once in a while, there's a troll, who will say something like, "I'm originally German, and Jihad and Turk is the scariest combination of names I can imagine." But I was always told don't read what the comments are on responses to online articles online. But I have to say that what gives me hope is, and what reifies me, what reaffirms me in my American Muslim identity, is the fact that with a name like Jihad, I am not harassed at all. If anything, at all. I mean, in growing up in high school, I was like homecoming king. I was like popular. People liked me. Maybe they didn't know what jihad meant back then, but still, they just thought it was Mexican jihad. But I grew up in Arizona, right? But I am constantly reaffirmed, and people call me up. I mean, after this attack in San Bernardino, I had an Orthodox rabbi call me. I had a conservative rabbi call me. I had a Reform rabbi call me. I had pastors call me. I had one of the largest Episcopal churches in Southern California, All Saints Church in Pasadena. They called me and they said, "We want you to recite Quran at our Christmas Mass." And I'm going to do it, all right? Again, I've done it before, all right? So, this is the kind of, embrace that I feel by my fellow Americans. Maybe I just don't look the part, and people then feel comfortable because I'm an American kid from Arizona. They just say, "Oh, wait, jihad, doesn't that mean holy war?" And it's the beginning of it's a sincere question, though. It's not ridicule, it's not harassment. And maybe because I'm an academic and maybe I'm just not in circles where, that kind of things happen. I know that kids who look Muslimy in school get harassed and get picked on and get bullied. But, yeah, Muslimy, I said that. But kids bully other kids for any reason any weakness that they see. All right, they'll pick on you. And I had a young person come to me one time. He was a big teddy bear of a guy. He's like 6'2". He was a freshman in school, going to a public school in LA, and he came to me at the beginning of the school year, and he was like on the verge of tears. He says, everyone's picking on me at school, they're calling me a terrorist, and this and that, and I can't stand it, and I don't know what to do. I said, well, listen, you have two options. Number one is you can reach out to, give us the word, and we'll come in there, we'll talk with the principal, we'll set up a sensitivity training for your whole school about Islam, we'll talk to your teachers, we'll go in, we got your back. I said, or you can realize that psychologically what's going on, the kid's picking on you because you look like an easy target, you look like when they say something mean that it hurts you and bothers you, it empowers them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, you could try and work with that psychology, and number one, as much as it might hurt, don't let it show that it hurts you. Number two, have a sense of humor and be self-deprecating. And number three, if they really start, going after you about terrorism and this and that, all you have to do is to respond by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm glad you asked that," because ISIS, when also known as Daesh, when the Kurds are attacking them, and then Saudi Arabia is also giving some support, and then the U.S. and the Russians, what do you think the best policy? They're going to look at you and say, "Never mind," and they're never going to ask you anything ever again because they're going to look so stupid, right? So. A couple of weeks later, this young man comes into my office. This was when I was at the Islamic Center. He comes into my office and he said, his big smile, and he's happy, and he's standing up tall. And he goes, no one bothers me. I tried your second approach. No one bothers me anymore. Life is good. So yes, people are picked on, but we can't be victim. We can't have a victim mentality. And if we just work with people as people and try and be good, we will find that people are at their core good. And we're reaffirmed. I was just retweeting. Chris Christie, was defending Muslims. He appointed, a Muslim attorney general. Edward Norton, the actor, just gave $400,000 to help Syrian refugees, and so many mayors. I mean, you saw what the Canadian Prime Minister did. They had 100 kids singing an Arabic song to welcome the refugees. I mean, it's so moving. People are good. Most people are good. And yes, there's some, people who harbor bigoted thoughts and animosity. And we shouldn't hate those people either. We should, the Quran, there's a Quranic verse, you quoted a couple, I'm going to quote one. This is one of my favorite verses. The verse reads, لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. So you can see right there. It says this is the commandment in the Quran. It says evil and good are not the same. Repel evil with goodness. With what is better, with goodness, until the one who is like your worst enemy becomes like your closest friend. This is our commandment. This is what the Quran teaches. It reminds me of this gentleman named Jesus who said, turn the other cheek, etc. So there's a resonance here. The values are the same, and this is the Quran. This is the Islam that inspires me to try and be a better person.
So I think you asked, are you afraid going public and so forth, right? So, actually it turns out that last weekend was a memorial service of my brother-in-law in New Jersey. And I couldn't travel because I was sciatic nerve, believe it or not. By the way, these chairs are not very good for that. So this happened, and on Sunday, December 6th, this was really bothering me, so I said this. And what I was afraid about was my wife. She says, I'm not coming back. This morning, she says, this photograph on the Facebook, take it out. It's true. I was in KVI, the same question was asked, Oregon KVI yesterday, today was the Seattle KVI. And I said, look, if I'm in the land of the free and home of the brave, and if I can't live freely, what's the point of being here? Right? This is really what it is. And if, for example, a bad thing happens to me, well, so what? We'll deal with it. God will protect me. But that's the thing, the faith in God. Today I see a lot of friends, I mentioned earlier, the overwhelming response we've received time and again from the non-Muslim community, our neighbors, people who are even atheists, right? They come and protect us. That really is the thing. As a person of faith, I gotta believe that. As a leader in the Imam congregation, people ask me, we should have security cameras, we should call the police. I said, why do you worry? You're coming here to pray. Be rest assured that when you take to pray, God is protecting you every step of the way. Right? That's what we have to do. Now, the issue, what is gives you faith? I mean, look, America, this is my discussion with Muslim friends and so on. America is not a perfect country. It never was. Right? I mean, 200 years ago, one nation under God, liberty and justice for all, was not liberty and justice for all. Right? Today we have challenges. But guess what? I say that I'm happy to be benchmarked. I'm happy to benchmark my nation, America, with any other nation and the progress we're making towards our ideals. And I think we will not do too badly. And that's what gives me hope. Right? That is why I'm an American, by choice, not by birth, by choice. Unlike many Americans in this room, perhaps. Right? It gives me hope because I believe in the ideas of this country. This is the most Islamic country in the world. More Islamic than Iran or Saudi Arabia or other Muslim countries. Because I can build a mosque without going through a hassle. I can pray and practice whatever faith I want. I would have my neighbors come protect me, right? They would come and support me. I remember my daughter, when she was fasting, one day in Margaret Mead Elementary School, her teacher comes and says, Asya, I'm going to fast with you, right? We have Terrell here. She invited me to the first Thanksgiving dinner, right? 25 years ago or something like this, right? And we've kept up this tradition. This is really what gives me hope, the wonderful people that make America. We also have to work on our image outside, because these stories are not being told. The image of America is an oppressive, powerful, corrupt regime. They don't see the people that are really my colleagues at work, right? My neighbors here, people who I go worship with, I enjoy coffee with. This is what gives me hope. But I think we as Muslims have a responsibility to carry this beautiful message of America outside, because I hate when somebody says death to America.
So just, I can see the headlines tomorrow. Jawad Khaki calls America Islamic country. All right.
So I was a little bit kind of taken by Jihad Turk's comment that my name is Jihad and no one is scared of me. I always thought that the Turk part is much scarier than the Jihad part. And I also kind of following the Jawad's comments, I think this gives me hope, right? That we come here from all different ways of lives, walks of life, and then we just kind of belong different faith traditions, different kind of political kind of orientation, but we are here because we care our communities here, we care Washington State, we care people across the nation, but we care also kind of globally, that this is a leading place in terms of environmental activism, and hopefully this will be a great place for interfaith activism, that people of faith and people of conscience without necessarily faith are getting together and helping to communities. As they look at the kind of questions, there is no way that I will be able to get through, but at the same time I will encourage Tezcan and Pacifica, giving the interest that we need to have more of this kind of public platform. And as kind of closing comments, I will ask one of my colleagues, Michael Trice, he is the Assistant Dean of Ecumenical and Interreligious Dialogue at the Seattle University, to just kind of conclude and then just kind of remind us what maybe kind of take-home message from this rich conversation. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you.
Thank you. So I actually have the easiest job of the evening, right? To just simply say thank you. I received a phone call this morning to that effect, and to express gratitude to all of you, to our presenters, to Jawad, Jihad, our moderator, the Pacifica Institute for this conversation, and for you taking the time out of your schedules to sit in a packed, hot room to have conversations of substance together. Can we just give all of us a round of applause? I also just want to say briefly that the Pacifica Institute, I'm at Seattle University, I teach in the area of comparative religious theology and social theory, and it has been a real pleasure to have a colleague like Tezcan and the Pacifica Institute, the work that they're doing effectively, to have conversations of substance like this in our own community, in our region. And I just want to lift you up and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I don't have any further content that I would add that wouldn't take away from the time you need for questions and conversation. So I want to honor that. Thank you all again for being here. There is some nourishment in the back room there with water and food, and also some sodas, and our wonderful presenters are here for conversation, and we just encourage that. Thank you very much.